And as you all know, that today's session is about Indigenous um, community, and it is about weaving communities through youth leadership in sustainability. And we thought that who else will be better to talk about it than someone who herself has been actively engaged in working with Indigenous community. So let's welcome our speaker who has done such wonderful and impactful work in this area, um, Miss Archana ma'am, who is also a founder of an organization called Sutradhar. So let's hear from her. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Nandini and Astha. And I'm really, really excited to be here because Nihal shared very briefly about this particular forum with me. And nothing brings me more joy than watching young people come together who are trying to, find their own path and also create possibilities in the world. Um, what I would really love to start with is as I work a lot with Indigenous communities, there are always practices of how do we arrive anywhere, right? And how do we become present in the essence of what we are going to be sharing. So there is this very beautiful book that I had read, and in that, how people identified was not just by their names, but they associated with something of nature that was very, very closely, where they lived. So they would say that, let's say I live close to a forest here, and I will say that I'm Archana, and I come here with Malki Forest, as my ally, or my elder is Malki Forest, or something like that. So, what do you associate with? Who is your elder that you have lived all your life around? And our elder are not just our grandparents. Our elders are also the rivers, the mountains, the forests, the trees that have grown in our backyard, right? That we have grown up along with. So they all become our elders, and they become somebody who witness our journeys of growth and also progression. And they have probably seen our parents and they have seen our grandparents. So there are cultures which basically associate and identify themselves with these elements, and because it tells very powerful stories of who they are and where they belong. So instead of becoming arrogant about who human beings can become in terms of our intellectual capacity, to say that we belong to this forest, right? And this is my elder, kind of a thing. That is what my identity is associated with. And it was done with the intention to always want to stay connected to environment, to nature, and look at them as our relative rather than look at it as an external aspect that we have to work towards, kind of a thing. We naturally take care of relatives, right? They're there in our subconscious mind. So we will begin with that today, and we will take our name, and we will maybe take a minute to think about this before we start introducing. But I would love to invite you to say that, let's say I'm Archana. So I'm Archana, and I belong to the Malki Forest in Shillong. And the forest has been my elder for the last 2 years now. So you all can take a minute to think about it a little, of where you have spent most of your life and what of nature around you that you can really call your elder or your relative. And how would you like to belong? What belonging do you have to it? And how would you like to introduce it over here today in this circle? And anybody can begin. There is no sequence. So even Nandani Asta, I would invite you also to just participate in it, okay? Can't be that difficult, huh?
Everybody, yeah, everybody
Hi.
is in so much thing. Okay. So, hi, I'm Prachi, and since I was a young child, I have always connected with nature around me a lot. It started with animals, and it started with my beloved pet dogs. And so I think even though I haven't been to many forests, sadly, and I don't live where I have access to, like regular access to going to such a beautiful and carefree natural surrounding, I think the thing that makes me happy always is whenever I'm traveling and I look up at the sky, and there are there are branches of trees like from the sides, and because the roads are lined with trees, so the trees always kind of bend, and whenever you look up, there's this in the middle, there's a strip of sky, a blue sky, maybe with hints of dark blue or maybe light blue somewhere, and clouds, and then there are different colored leaves decorating it from the side. And many a times I have noticed some shapes. Like once there was this inverted heart made by the leaves, and I just always love that so much. Even though I don't, I'm not able to touch it. I'm not able to feel a physical connection, but it's just something that I always notice and I enjoy.
Okay.
I can go next. Uh, I think my elder has been grass. And the reason being that, y- I, even though I live in one of the greenest areas of Delhi, but there, I don't know the name of trees, so I won't be naming them. But I think grass has been one thing that since childhood, because I've been living at one place, and I've played there on in the gardens, and yeah, I think it's been there since childhood, so I would call that my elder. We can tag, I guess. Is it okay if we tag?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I'm not sure who's ready and who's not, but you're welcome to tag.
Okay. I would
Ready to go.
then
Should
I
I go next?
yes, then I tag Nandini.
Okay, thanks, Asta. Okay. I come from Chhattisgarh, and in Chhattisgarh, the area that I belong to is mostly a dry, deciduous forest. So whenever I close my eyes, I don't see a lot of greenery or green forest, but what I associate mostly majorly is with thorns and spikes, because those are the kind of trees that I have seen there, and it used to be very useful in winters and during the festival that we used to celebrate. So I I think I associate with it, and having said that, I also associate with people. I see people as my ancestor, because that the tree is huge, और जो उनकी ऐसे लटाएं ऐसे निकलती रहती है, it gives me a feeling that it holds a lot of story. And I and i used and I always wonder what this tree has seen during his lifetime. So I think those thorn and spikes and people, they are my ancestors. And I tag Kashish. Are you ready, Kashish? Or should I tag someone else? Kashish, you have to speak. Unable to unmute my mic. Okay, ठीक है.
So Kashish is saying, I'm connected more to nature because I feel peace. So the intention here is to basically say that what around me in my circle do I identify the most with? Maybe it's a banyan tree that I climbed as a child. Maybe a mango tree that I climbed in summer and broke, just took mangoes from and ate. Maybe that mango tree was in your neighbor's yard and you quietly went. We did that a lot as kids. We would just run away into anybody's yard, just climb quickly, steal a few mangoes as kids and run away and really savor those mangoes. And I think there was more taste in the ones which you stole as kids. And all our neighbors knew that, right? That all the kids are going to come and steal. So they had factored it in that some children are going to be vicious. Some are going to be polite and ask, can I have a mango? But the others are going to just climb the tree. So we were the ones who would just run up the tree, break the mangoes, and run equally fast out, right? So even something like that mango tree can be your ancestor. So the whole nature, yes, it's an ecosystem, right, that we thrive in. But there can be, you can't have, what do you most associate with, right now? What do you most connect with? A river, a mountain, a tree, something that brings back a memory or a story. uh, that is something very, very important, right, to look at it as an elder, because it teaches you something. And what even Nandini was talking about, thorns, right? Thorns are important because they protect an ecosystem which is more sensitive, which requires protection. So everything in nature has a purpose. At the end of the day, it's up to us to recognize that, right? So what for you, what do you believe is an ancestor and how do you resonate with that? You can share that. If not, also it's okay, but you can say that, this is my ancestor. This is what is from next to my house. It can be a rose shrub. It doesn't have to be a huge tree or a river or a mountain. Like I'm blessed to be living in Meghalaya right now, so I'm surrounded with nature, right? And I just have to travel out a few kilometers to be close to a river body or to be next to a waterfall. And I live in the mountains, and I'm surrounded by everything around here. But I understand. I've also lived in Bombay, but in my society, we had a lot of these beautiful tree, and for me, the most beautiful was the people tree, because it is so huge and it provides so much shade. It is ancestral. Like people tree takes years and decades, and it stays, right? It doesn't stay with one generation; it stays with many generations, and that's an elder to so many. So, like that, what memory do you have, right? Like Asta also mentioned, for me, I associate it with grass, and it's okay, maybe, right? Because grass also has its healing capacity, and it also provides you with a very different intelligence altogether. So something like that. I'm saying any specific mountain, and would you like to just come and speak?
Like I'm just connected to mountain because from childhood I've been in like from my ancestors they were from mountains and like I'm being surrounded with stream, river, pine trees and
Mm-hmm.
valleys. And in childhood we used to play that picnic where we used to uncook food. We used to eat that and sometimes we're running in the valley where we sleep down and all. And sometimes we just sleep in the grass and look to the sky and see the drawing of the cloud and all. And sometimes we used to see the deers, the animals around us. And sometimes we used to go to the falls, river falls and all. The we when we used to catch the fish and all, and it was very interesting. But nowadays it's been polluted by the waste and all, and can see that most of the like forest area being destructed and all, and most of them are creating the resort and all. It's all been destroyed and all. And we when we can where we used to play the valley and all, the agriculture area been constructed, and we used to feel so sad that the days we used to spend over there is no more and all.
Where are
So
you
that's
located, Amsa?
Darjeeling.
Darjeeling.
It's
Yes. I understand what you're speaking about. Yes, I've been there. Who would like to go next? As I see Saeed, Ramis, I can maybe tag you and invite you to share.
Hello, I am Ramiz. I am from Assam. I am
Okay.
from Jorhat, a city that's all around 300 kilometers from Guwahati.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I would say being raised in a suburban environment since childhood with expanses of tea gardens going up to the horizon, I have been surrounded amidst nature all my life. But like I said, the tea gardens and especially a sunset where the sun just goes beyond the horizon with only tea expenses everywhere to the eyesight uh, is what I connect with, and probably a cup of tea too, I guess.
Sure. Great. Would you like to tag somebody else?
Sure, I will probably tag Manju.
Yes, hi everyone.
Hi, Manju.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Hope so I'm audible. Okay. So I'm from Kalimpong, and uh, the most I would like to share two things that I'm most connected with. The first one is the mountain, particularly Mount Chinjanga, and the other one is the hills and valleys of my village. So I spent almost 10 years of my life in a hostel that's in Loligao Cafe in Kalimpong district itself. So right from my school's veranda, we used to see this majestic Mount Kanchenjunga from left to right. So uh, so our school started from 8:30 in the morning. So we had to reach school by 8. So then I was an early bird. So I used to reach school as soon as possible, and then I used to stand at the veranda of our school building, and I used to watch the mountains. As you can imagine, the morning view when the sun rises, and that sunrise, it just hits the mountain and you can see the glow. I can't express how beautiful it looks. I still have that picture right in front of me, and I feel so grateful that I was able to enjoy that view. So that is one thing that I feel really connected with. That is Mount Kanchenjunga, and that made me feel so peaceful. Even when I was young, I felt so connected to nature, and that was the only thing that gave me peace. Because in the hostel, I used to miss home so much, and I wanted to go back home. I missed my family. I missed everyone. But seeing that mountains view in the morning, and that felt like another home to me. And as years passed by, and I came back to my village, and then lots of obstacles came in the path, and trying to figure out what to do in life, and also coping with the losses of my grandparents, and particularly my grandmother. So that was the time when I wanted to be all by myself, and feel peace, and also yeah, that is how I wanted to feel. So I used to go by myself. I used to take a long walk. You can imagine that in the hilly areas, how the roads are very less people. They walk along the roads, and then that used to keep me so much, at peace. It used to keep me so grounded, and I used to feel so much connected with nature. And still today, I am so much grateful that I live in such place, and I belong to such place. And as M Sang, she shared that how things have changed now, how things were before, and with the coming of this construction of highway going on through my village, and that has led to the destructions of lots of trees, and most of the greener parts of my village. So that is also one thing. So Having said that, yes, I feel very much connected with the mountains and also the hills and the valleys and the narrow roads of my village.
Great.
Yes,
Thank
that's
you so much, Manju. And I really appreciate all the beautiful stories you all are sharing with what you connect with and what are your memories associated with it, right? And I want to be also mindful of time and also figure out a way that we have more to listen to each other and to share from this lens. And that also brings me to Nitin. And who are the people who are left? There is Nitin and Shrishti, right? So whoever is ready can go first. Nitin, would you like to go? Able to hear you, Nitin.
Am I audible?
A little bit, yes.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
I hope audible. Hello.
I think
Nitin,
because
would
his speaking voice is not clear. Nitin, you can write it in the chat
What?
box also.
Am I audible now?
No, not to me.
so Nitin, why don't you just type it in the chat and we will read it out on your behalf. Shrishti,
Yes.
would you
Am I
like to
audible
go?
now? Is it audible now?
Yes, little bit,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit. I
Yes.
can hear him little, but I don't know.
Little bit. Maybe I can
Yeah.
try. I wanted to speak. So if
Okay,
you can
please,
go ahead.
please. Yeah, please. We will try our best. Nitin?
Hello.
Yeah, Nitin. Okay, I think he's just dropped off. Shrishti, would you like to go next?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Srishti. I am from Kolkata. So living in a city, I think being surrounded by nature is a privilege for me. But fortunately, we have a lot of trees in the compound I live in my society. So I live on the fifth floor, and I've lived here for like past 10 years. So there is a tree. I don't know the name of that particular tree, the name of the species. However, like I have seen it like grow. Earlier, it used to cover like one fourth of my window, then it like two-thirds of my window, and there was a time like it covered the whole window, and I could only see the tree and not the other buildings. But I remember like 2, 3 years back, I think during COVID, we had this cyclone in West Bengal, like a very big cyclone, and it impacted like a lot of trees in my own society were broken off, and that particular tree also, like it did not get destroyed completely. However, like some of the branches were broken, so it grew shorter in height. So I like associate with that, and I consider that tree to be my elder because I have seen it grow and go through like different changes, go through hard times, and that is something I think I can also relate to. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shrishti. Nitin, do you want to try?
Yes. Am I audible now? I hope I am.
Yes. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm Nitin. I'm from Delhi, and I have been raised in a place which we don't have a lot of forest around, or a lot of nature around. It's very hard. So but one thing which has stayed with me, or I would say has resonated with me the most, is the sky. Because when I used to travel, I have this memory that when I used to travel in my childhood to my village, so leaving my grandmother, who I loved the most. So I used to see the sky, and I used to think that, okay, my grandmother, this sky is not leaving me behind. Means I thought that once this sky would end, because I'm going to a new place, and then there would be something else and not the sky. But after even reaching every place, I used to find the same sky and the same sun coming up, the same moon coming up. So I used to feel very, uh, um, happy that, okay, this is something that my grandmother is also able to see, and I'm also able to see, so we are connected. So also the sky, because I think sky is limitless. And I think in world, everybody is trying, means we are so much of restricted, means there are systems
Mm,
trying to restrict us in terms of everything we do, everything, how we act. But I think the sky is beautiful in its face. It is abundant, it is limitless. And yeah, and I believe in that flexibility and in that abundance, that you don't have to limit, but it's limitless. So that's why I resonate with sky. So yeah, thank you.
great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Nitin. Has everybody spoken? I think everyone has, right? Great. So, why I invited you to delve a little into this, because suddenly we had to really go into this deep thought of what is really around us, right? We go about living our lives, and do we find those connections and relationality with what's around us today? Because that is how our ancestors were, right? No matter what their actions were, no matter what they planned, they always factored in everything around them, right? So, how I will tell you share a little about my journey with you. I'm an armed forces kid. So since childhood, I've traveled a lot across India, and I was always from one place to another. As my father was in Indian Navy, I was naturally bound to the ocean, and I have a very deep relationship with water as an element, and ocean uh, as a elder too. And it became something that I naturally just connected to, like water bodies. And because my brother is a mountaineer, I naturally flowed then towards mountains as well. So then it became this whole thing of people would always ask me, what would you prefer, mountains or the ocean? And I'm like, why do I need to choose one? I'm made of five elements, and I choose all five elements. I prefer an ocean next to a forest where there is also a mountain, kind of a thing. And they're like, no places like that exist. I like multiple places like that exist, right? And my life was all about moving between these elements and traveling around and exploring a lot of things. I wanted to be a pilot, but when I, as my father was in armed forces and my brother was in armed forces, and they were not really taking women into active service then, and they said you'll have a desk job. And being an active person, I like, okay, that's not something which is really going to work for me. Um, I spoke to my brother, who has been my inspiration all my life, and he's like, "You choose to do what you really feel called to, and take responsibility for your action." So I decided to walk out of my graduation on in the final year, and I thought this is not for me, because I really wanted to do psychology and philosophy that connected me to people and the essence and a lot of other things, but that did not work, and hence I kept into this entire process of self exploration of what do I really want to do, and moved from there, and came to Bombay. I started with selling clothes in Cotton World, which used to hire students and give them part-time jobs. Then I became a hostess at a beautiful live music space. From there, so my life journey was whatever came my way. I did it with a lot of love and a lot of passion, and moved to the next step. And I always met the next person who I'm supposed to work with at my previous workspace. And that relationality always stayed with me. Um, Parallel to that, I always kept pursuing my passion for mountaineering. I'm a professional mountaineer. I actually have been a lot to Darjeeling and Sikkim, because I did my both basic and advanced mountaineering course from HMI. So I have been there. I've traveled a lot across Northeast. And then I did my search and rescue from NIM, which is in Uttarakhand. And that brought me to a deep connection with the mountains. And I said, okay, how can I be of service to the mountains and to the people and to all the whole ecosystem? What can I do? That thought started working with me much, much early in life. I started a public relations company, a brand consultancy in India, and when I was just 25 years old. I ran that for 11 years, but my heart was always more towards the mountains and towards what can I do for the world, kind of a thing. And after 11 years, I decided to move out of that. I was selected for a program in Brazil, and that is where I met uh, the first Indigenous elder that I spent a lot of time with, to listen to what he really had to speak about, what his concerns for the world were. And he inspired me a lot. And I I correlated that something like this must be also happening back in India. I need to go back and find out. And I came back to India and I started searching and meeting people and traveling a lot across the entire Northeast ecosystem. And that's when I recognized how rapidly communities were vanishing and how rapidly, along with the community, a lot of knowledge was vanishing. And with each bit of this knowledge gone, a large part of our identities were being lost altogether, right? Now, I have also been a big fan of how learning needs to happen because we all will relate to this. Like, how many of us realistically really enjoyed school, the entire holistic experience of school? It wasn't a very happy, joyful experience for me. I felt very stifled because for me, it was a very militarized and factory led school system. I was just told what to do, but any kind of free thought or questioning was not really very encouraged. I don't know if the school system has changed today. I hope it has, but it wasn't the same case when I was a kid, right? And for me, my attention was always outside the window next to the birds flying around. Like my school compound had beautiful trees and everything. And that is where we would do the morning prayers. And I like, why can't we study there? Why are we sitting inside a classroom under 40-degree temperature with one little fan in the middle of the room running with 50 of us sitting over here and a teacher who's just trying to do a job, who's not even interested or passionate about what they're teaching, right? And when I started exploring my entire journey of learning and also looking at this need that is there in the world of protecting the knowledge ecosystem, one of the common factors that really came about was that how we have been very systemically separated away from the stories of our ancestors, right? Now, if we look at the entire education system, there are how many of us in this room right now? 10 of us. Now, 10 of us probably belong to 10 different communities, 10 different tribes or cultures or whatever you might call it. How many of you experienced the stories of your ancestors in your learning ecosystem or in your school? Right? What was missing for me when I grew up? And I recognized that a lot of my own stories were missing. A lot of the stories of my ancestors, my community was missing. And I started exploring. We have a very sanitized learning ecosystem, which tells us the same history for the last 75 years, like the same narratives. But there is so much more that happened, right? And those stories are all not a part of our learning ecosystem. Britishers not only were not ousted by out of India, or they were not thrown out of India just by a few freedom fighters. There was a whole community of people. There were leaders from tribal communities. There were leaders who were protecting the forests and the mountain ranges and so many other spaces, right? And everybody stood together in solidarity together. But we don't hear about those stories. We only hear about stories of probably 15 to 20 leaders max to max, like if we can think about it, right? And why is that the case? Like, what actually happened? Now, this happened a lot also because indigenous communities were criminalized. They said there is nothing called indigenous communities, right? So these are scheduled tribes as a terminology came much later, but indigenous as a word was criminalized altogether. So indigenous communities were considered to be like these, untouchable kind of derogatory tribes, and that we should not associate with, and those were criminalized. At the same time, gender diversity was criminalized, right? So these were two very, very large components in the history, which we as a community and a culture thrived in, were actually criminalized. And as a result, the kind of knowledge and stories that we would have had access to, we did not have it because the education system that was created during the Britishers' time had a very structured learning ecosystem that only fed a particular industry or fed a particular mindset that taught you enough to become employable or to do a job, but did not teach you enough to ask a question, right? It kept you in line. It kept you in line. It taught you to be disciplined, or it taught you to be what do you call it? बहुत अच्छा बच्चा है, मतलब ज्यादा लड़ाई झगड़ा तू तड़ाक नहीं करता है, मतलब हम सबने सुना है ना, इफ यू आस्क टू मेनी क्वेश्चन देन यू आर द बदमाश बच्चा, एंड इफ यू डोंट आस्क क्वेश्चंस देन ओ सच अ नाइस बॉय और सच अ नाइस गर्ल, सच अ नाइस चाइल्ड, so well mannered. Well-mannered was the word I was looking for, right? So if you ask questions, you are not considered a well-mannered child. You are considered to be a outspoken child, right? And where did these terminologies come? And that is how we kill curiosity. That is how we stop people from asking question, and that is how we fall in line. But a lot of time, if we really want to achieve something, we really need to step out of the line. And we really need to ask questions and uncomfortable questions. And we need to recognize our stories and we need to bring those stories back into the mainstream, right? Now, when you have completely eliminated the identities of our communities and their stories from the mainstream learning ecosystem, you have completely eliminated the rituals, practices, ceremonies from the way we practiced life, and you've completely eliminated the practices we had in terms of sustainable livelihood, which was mindful of environment, nature, and everybody in the ecosystem. You have completely created an ecosystem which is only guided by a capitalist mindset, which says, okay, there are people who can feed this particular structure. You work for me and I will give you wages. Wherein nobody, nature was not owned by anybody, right? There were few people who decided that they had more and they knew more, and hence they could create this whole ecosystem. So, going back into the entire space, we said, okay, the most important thing is to first revive the pride in who we are and what our stories are. The most important part is that we can't let our stories to be lost. And that is the most important part. Like, how many of us would really know stories that our grandparents know of their ancestors? I don't, because it keeps diluting, right? It keeps missing. And soon these will vanish. Because let's say our grandparents were a part of a community. Then our parents started going into an education system because, of course, it's good to get educated, right? Not recognizing that learning should be a platform that allows you to open your mind. It makes you curious. It makes you look at things from a different lens and perspective, and it invites you into questioning and curiosity. It should not clamp you down. It should not take away from you your ability to ask the right question. No? And that is where the whole thing is. So your parents went to school and they were the nice, well-mannered kids, right? And they wanted to pass that on to you as well. So what happens is, as each generation went to school, they kept forgetting about their stories and their stories kept getting diluted. So by the time it reached my grandchild, that story is completely only 5 or 10% of what it authentically was. Right? And that story was so much more than just a story. It was our way of being. It was our practice. It was our relationship with each other as a community. It was our relationship with the environment. It was our relationship with everything. How did we thrive as an ecosystem? That is what the magic was all about, right? Communities learned from each other. They did not always go into conflict with each other over small things like land. People shared. People said, oh, you don't have land? Okay, I have more land. Here, you take. As a clan, you decided that, oh, everybody should be taken care of. Everybody should have food. So people shared generously. If somebody did not have a house, everybody went together and built a house. No? And that is how. So reciprocity was a very essential, integral ingredient today. Try doing that today. People will be, oh my God, he took 10 rupees from me and had a chart. Where is my 10 rupee? I have not got it back. Right? It can happen because our minds have become so small. We don't trust each other. We don't trust each other easily. And it happens also because our entire value ecosystem has been completely compromised on who we are as human beings, right? And what role we play in the ecosystem. We have become so arrogant because we say, oh my God, science, human beings developed science. But science comes from spirituality, and spirituality comes from our ancestors. So at the end of the day, no matter what you study today, everything has its roots back into the traditional wisdom of our ancestors and our communities. So why are we not giving it that much of uh, importance? And why are we not bringing it into the heart? Because the world is in chaos. Our young people are losing, they don't have a sense of purpose or identity. And I see that a lot across the indigenous communities I'm working with in the mountains, where the younger generation don't understand their sense of purpose, but there is a whole pressure on them to perform into a competitive environment that they don't understand. They don't know where to apply the knowledge that they're supposed to gain, and what are they supposed to do with it. So if I don't understand application of something, I lose interest, and then I'm not able to learn it from that urgency point of view, and I'm not able to perform well in it. Hence I keep failing, and my failure is seen as my abject failure in life itself, wherein failure is a milestone to say, okay, maybe wrong way of doing this thing, maybe I need to discover some other way. But we have made such a huge demon out of failure itself, which was encouraged by our ancestors, that keep trying, keep failing, it's okay. It was taken as a appreciation, saying that, oh, failing means that person is trying consistently, right? But today we don't do that. Today we ridicule somebody who fails. And there are so many such examples. I can like talk for days on this. But at the end of the day, what we need to realize is that what are we losing today? Where have we lost these connections? And what we are trying to do at Sutradhar is, so Sutradhar is a Sanskrit word, right? If anybody, one of you understands. And Sutra literally means a thread, and Dhar means a thread that binds everything together, right? And if you look at the Sanskrit version of it, it means a facilitator, a storyteller, a connector, right? So Sutradhar's entire purpose is that how do we connect these disconnected dots? How every person becomes a Sutradhar within themselves. Asta is the Sutradhar for me because she coordinated this whole gathering between me and Nihal, and you know, kept doing the whole thing. So for me, she's a Sutradhar. And I'm sure each one of you is a Sutradhar between your community and being in this particular space and many more people that you talk to. But do we recognize what our role is in the larger ecosystem? That is the important thing. And for that, we need to first reduce the noise in our mind. Oh my God, you finished school. Okay, which college are you going to go to? Oh, you've gone to college. What subject are you choosing? Okay, have you decided what are you going to work in life? Okay, where are you going to go? Where are your friends going? What's happening? So many questions, right? So many choices. But we are not stopping. We are not breathing. We are not figuring out what's important to us. What does our, not just our mind, but what does our heart and body also feel comfortable in? So important to do that. And that mindfulness was a practice that our ancestors had from the very beginning, since children. But we don't have that now. We have this very rushed life, and then we reach a certain point of breakdown, and then we say, oh, I need to stop. Then I start taking counseling. And I'll say, oh, you know what? I need to prioritize. What if we taught our children from the very beginning to prioritize, to stop, to breathe, to sense into what is important to them, and then do what they believe they are the best at, rather than the society, the parents, the peer pushing them into doing something that they feel is the right thing to do because it's the hep thing to do, right? So, what we are trying to do at Sutradhar is one, protecting the indigenous knowledge ecosystem by reviving these traditional ways of learning and living and practicing. Two, we are bringing all this knowledge into the central hub, and we are saying that, okay, how do we bridge the gap between the ancestral and the modern? Right? We don't want to be on this moral high ground and say that, oh, all modern knowledge is, rubbish. It's not. There is a whole lot of merit in the modern knowledge also, but how do we find balances? Very, very important. So, we are trying to bridge the gap between the ancestral wisdom and the modern knowledge and know how. And we are saying, okay, what is the right thing for me to do? I'm not saying this is the right thing for everybody to do, but we are creating a space where one finds a space to figure out what works the best for them, right? And what we are trying to do is we are trying to take the fear away from learning. The highest number of dropouts of kids in mountain communities is happening by the standard fifth. 50% of my school drops out because of the fear of learning, because it happens in a language that they are not very comfortable with. It happens in an ecosystem which is very, very competitive, and it is constantly showing one child down by showing the other child up and saying, haven't you seen that child perform better? What is wrong? You can also learn. If this child can do, why can't you do? But capacities are different. An elephant can't climb a tree and a fish can't fly. Some fishes can, but they can't fly in the sky, right? So at the end of the day, you can't compare one child to another, just like we can't compare the 10 people in this room with one another. Each one brings their own beautiful skills, knowledge, passion, everything. And that is what makes us this eclectic group, right? That can learn with each other and it can thrive as a community. But try making everybody same and we will all fail. And that is the part of it, right? So Sutradhar as an ecosystem is focused on that and saying that how can we, one, protect the traditional knowledge ecosystem, document it, because most of the traditional knowledge ecosystem was oral tradition, right? So we are saying, how do we document it? And what we want to do is we want to provide the tool to our kids in the communities to say that you choose what tool do you want to use to basically tell your story. You want to use animation, you want to use photography, you want to make videos, you decide how you want to tell your story. So that means they learn a skill, they use that skill to tell the stories from a different lens, and they acquire more skills in that way, right? What we are saying is, one, take the fear away from learning. Two, access to any kind of subjects should not be uh, only available to privilege. Now, tell me one thing, if anybody can answer me here, when do you think you can start studying astronomy, really? If you were interested in astronomy, when can you start studying it? Do you think in college, school, do you get access to it? Not much. College? Somewhat. Once you have moved college science and then you say, okay, I want to really specialize in it, I can go there. Do you think government schools offer it? It's in private institution. It's in international institutions where you have to pay a lot of money and then you can learn it. Now, astronomy was a very integral part of the knowledge ecosystem of our ancestors. They studied the stars, they found their path, they understood the ecosystem, right? They could actually sense the change in weather patterns and everything. Lost that skill over a period of time because we became too dependent on science. Because science was there, like Google Maps is there to show us which path to go on. And so many times Google Maps just makes you go around in circles, right? So if you don't apply your mind, you will keep going around in circles. Now, what we are trying to do is we are partnering with this boy who is very, very passionate about promoting astronomy. So he's like, I can come and set observatory and planetariums. I can also teach kids how to make a telescope with items in the house. Like, awesome. So we are building this whole program and we are saying, great. We want to make astronomy as a subject accessible to anybody in the community who's interested in studying astronomy. I don't care whether they've ever gone to school, they speak a word of English or not, but they're welcome into my lab. They're welcome in our space. Because these subjects were something which were naturally taught from early childhood. But today we have made them exclusive. We have made them inaccessible by attaching a financial component to it. And hence we don't study it anymore. But we are trying to bring back all these topics into these spaces to say that here you go. Explore the world how you would like it and how you would want to, what would you like to turn that into, right? So astronomy is just one example I'm giving you. The other thing we are doing is, if I'm setting up a planetarium and an observatory, I'm saying, okay, this is a scientific way of looking at the galaxy. You can, like my ancestors could see the stars, but they could not see beyond the stars. That is where science comes now. It shows me what the whole ecosystem looks like, right? But what are my stories associated to my constellations, to my stars? It's important for me to remember those as well. So how do I marry science to my traditional knowledge is where this thing gets married together, right? And that is what we are trying to do. So we are trying to identify all these topics that emerged from our ancestors and our communities. And one, how do we make them playful for learning? Learning becomes scary when it's not playful anymore, when it becomes very, you know, one unidirectional and very competitive, very exam driven, and those kind of things. So we are one looking at how to introduce pedagogy of play in everything, no matter how tough a subject. How do we break it down and make it interesting to a child or to anybody who wants to learn it, right? Nothing is difficult, nothing is that big that you can't learn, right? And that is what we want every child to believe, so that they can explore whatever they want and then they can start focusing on what that really interests them, and then they can grow further into that without being told. Children are very intuitive. If you leave them be, they're the most intelligent creatures on the planet, right? They have the intelligence to go and pick up what really serves them and their need, and they will find ways and methods to deal with it. And we are trying to bring that intelligence back into the system and say that allow the child to take that decision, make that decision, right? And we are partnering with people. So we are building this entire ecosystem through collaborative process. I don't believe I have solutions and answers for everything. So I co-create the whole structure and the space in partnership with the communities by saying that what is the knowledge that you want to really protect that you have right now? What is the knowledge that your ancestors had, which has vanished and you would like to revive back? But what are also the practices which the current generation and you feel are regressive and you should leave behind? That is what evolution is all about, right? There are practices which are regressive and we cannot carry them forth. So at the end of the day, we are not looking blindly at indigenous knowledge to, put it right in the center like a rock. But we are saying that how can it be such a smart ecosystem that it learns and thrives and grows and evolves? And that is what it needs to do. It needs to use science in a very smart way to say that science and spirituality can coexist, right? And how they have been existing for generations altogether. So Sutradhar's purpose and intention is that today I really wanted to bring two other co-travelers in this journey with me. We work at the intersection of indigenous knowledge across Asia, Africa, and Latin America because our histories and our journeys are very interconnected with each other. All these three continents were very brutally colonized, right? Asia, Africa, and Latin America. We've gone through a lot of trauma collectively as communities. There is a lot of work happening across these three continents to revive our identities and revive our stories and revive these kind of spaces of learning and providing our children a very new way of learning. And not just children, anybody who wants to learn in the community, right? That's important. And we want to say that what can we learn by also talking to each other and not just being in our own silo, right? And not just glorifying our own stories, but how can I connect to so many other stories across these three continents that talks about the story of resilience, the story of reclaiming my identity, reclaiming my wisdom, and reclaiming my story. That is what the work is all about at the end of the day. The other thing that we are doing through this kind of a partnership across these three continents is to say that cross-pollination of knowledge and learning is very, very important. Learning can come from any part of the world. Why am I limited to my institution and my school? I can learn from somebody sitting in Africa or Latin America. Why am I not being exposed to that? If we have come so forward as a species which has internet access all over, why am I still limiting my child's learning within a certain ecosystem? Why am I not expanding their purview with that, right? So we said that cross-pollination of knowledge would be the other thing where our children from our communities will go and learn anywhere in the world. So the way we created the whole ecosystem was we said that between 12 and 18, so our entire learning spaces is actually experiential learning. We don't force a child into book and pen, and we say learn by doing it. Okay. 12 to 18 is where we create these exchange programs within India. We have partners where you can go and spend 2 to 4 weeks. We create residency program, volunteering programs, and all those. You learn from that. You start talking about your story. When you start talking about your story, you recognize what's missing in your story when you listen to somebody else. So as a result, you keep coming back and you're learning more. And there is this whole circle of knowledge that keeps, just bubbling up and keeps building up. That's what you do. 18 to 25, 18-year onward is where we actually invite our learners to explore the world outside. And we say, okay, if you really wanted to learn something, and there were an opportunity, there is this tribe in Africa which has actually created this whole village on the principles of art of hosting, that how can we host conversation that actually creates mindful communities. There is a whole community on that. Would you like to visit them? Or would you like to go to this institution in Egypt that basically has beautiful different methods of documenting stories of our ancestors, current information, and they just have these beautiful practices of documentation and wanting to learn about that. So you choose. So depending on their interest, depending on what they want to specialize in, depending on what would serve their community, they choose the subjects, right? And we create these opportunities for them to actually have access to those knowledge ecosystems and to actually go there and live with those tribes for at least 2 to 4 months to just learn there. Because Why 2 to 4 months or maybe 6 months? Because first few weeks just go in understanding who you are in between, to embrace their culture, to share your culture, to share your stories, right? By the time you get comfortable, we don't want it to be the time for you to come back already. So we are saying, okay, you've taken a few weeks to just become comfortable somewhere. Now start sharing, start learning. You also start sharing your knowledge with them. And that is the kind of exchange that happens, right? During that phase, people also build their own project, which has to be designed to serve their communities back home. To say that, what is that one problem my community has that I want to solve with all the knowledge I'm gathering from around the world, right? What is the purpose of our knowledge today? Nobody in our school and college ever asked us to say, look at anything and say that, okay, this is what you're interested in. So tell me, what problem in the world are you solving, right? It's okay if you want to do it just for the love of reading. Are you writing poetry? Do you love to write? Do you love to speak? Do you love to sing? But nobody asks us that, right? They just ask us to study, and they ask us to perform, and they ask us to pass, and they ask us to get out of a system and then go find a job, and then probably get married and then have children. And there is a whole cycle, right? So those are the kind of things that are there. And all those things are important too. But it should be the choice of the person and not be dictated by a societal pressure, right? And that is what we are talking about. And our ancestors were very intelligent that way. They provided those choices. Do you know indigenous cultures were the most gender diverse communities? They recognized all kind of gender diversities. There were lesbians, gays, trans people, all kind of people in ancestral communities as well, and they were revered. Trans people were the most revered in indigenous communities. They were considered to be the they were considered to be the fine balance between the masculine and the feminine. And to say that, they were the shamans, they were the healers, they were the teachers in a community, because they were the safest that the community felt sending their children to learn, because they would be balanced in teaching them about the importance of the man and the woman's role in a community, and never put one above the other, right? But today, what has happened? Our world has become patriarchal. All the war that you see, all the collapses that you see, it is because of the patriarchal powers that are there. Because the mother energy, the feminine energy has completely depleted, or it has come down. But that is on rise as well, right? And that is the importance, to recognize all these fine balances that we have in our ecosystem. So when we talk about indigenous knowledge, it is not just about our stories, it is about our practices. It is about recognizing the importance of balances in who we are as human being, why nature is not just anything to protect, but nature is our ally, it's our relative, it's our ancestor, that we really need to also factor in while even thinking about anything, which we are not doing and which we are not being taught. Which education system today is teaching us to have values, to have morals, to have ethics, to be kind to everybody, to build relationships with each other? It's not teaching us that, right? Competition isolates us, it doesn't allow us to collaborate. And if you want to work collaboratively, that is when communities will rise together again. When we are not afraid that, oh, this person will, run 2 steps faster than me if I enable them. And it's okay. Why can't you be proud that somebody can run faster because of you? And why should you feel threatened? And that is what our current system is gearing us towards, right? So this is just a little about the work I'm doing. I have spoken to Astha and also Nihal, and I would love to bring some of the indigenous people in the next conversation that we are hoping we can have in January, where they are going to come and talk to you about what are the kind of rituals and practices of their communities they are protecting, and that they are bringing back into the center, and that they are trying to heal the world with one small act at a time, right? And how they are doing it by inviting people into just thinking of how their practices in life can be a little different, and how it betters the world at large, that kind of a thing. So that is about Sutradhar. That is about my journey, and I'm committed to this purpose and this cause for rest of my life, because this has been my calling for the last decade or so. And I travel a lot. I travel all around the world. Um, Apparently, I have been told I still have my ancestors in Brazil, and I hope one day to go and meet them. And that is the power of shamans, and that is the power of listening to people who are bridges between worlds. Today, science does not believe in such people, but I have seen the power of such people who can help you connect. Sometimes we feel very alone, right? Sometimes we have this feeling that nobody understands me and nobody connects. And that happens because somewhere certain aspects and parts of our life is just not functioning well. And that is, something that we really need to look at the end of the day. So I want to leave you guys just with a little thought on, if you could revive any story, and if you could bring that story into, if that story was a part of your growing and your learning journey, how would your life be any different than what it is today? Like, what would it change, right, for you? And I'm not talking about any story. I'm talking about a story that is of your family, of your tribe, or who you are, where you come from. I want you to think deeply about that, right? And that might require a little bit of work to figure out that where do you, so I belong to the Kshatriya Rajput family community, right? Regressive community. Like they were always attacking somebody, killing somebody, taking away somebody's wife, or doing something else. But there are also stories of kindness, right? There are stories of wisdom. And I need to find those stories to have pride in that particular thing. Because right now it's a very screwed up narrative that I have of my tribe. But I'm sure there are good narratives as well. So, what is that story that you would have loved to grow up with that would have probably changed the way, or changed how you would look at the world today, and what you would not struggle with? So, what do you struggle with? Do you struggle with not being able to express very clearly? Do you express? I think we will be done within the next 10 minutes. Unless people have questions, I'm happy to come back and answer questions. Yeah. So I just want you guys to explore that one story in your life. And maybe when we meet back in January, we will open with that story. So I would love to hear if you have any questions, you have reflections. It doesn't have to be a question, it can just be a reflection if something really comes out very strongly for you. That's all.
Friends, do ask if you have any questions.
Or if you would like to share anything, what did you think about? I would just like to say, did I make sense when I speak about it? Whatever I spoke and share, because a lot of time people like us, when we are driven by a certain passion project, we can go in all direction. And it can be like this octopus with 8 tentacles, not make any kind of sense. But yeah, I hope it made sense to some of you. And yeah, if there is anything that I can support you with in your journey of what you're hoping to discover. So I'm just going to quickly give you my next few years, what it looks like. Um, I'm going to be launching a research which will basically help identify what is the need of such kind of knowledge to be brought back into the center of our learning. So what is it that the communities also feel should be there as a practice of learning for our children? What should not be lost? And what are the younger generation feel? So there will be a research we will be creating, and we will be inviting people who want to be a part of the research, because it is going to support their own learning or their community, and it's internship kind of a thing, right? And we are identifying host organizations in each state, and the interns are going to be somewhere connected with them, and we are doing a national study for this. Okay, that'll be like a 3 to 6 months program, post which we will be launching a fellowship called Indigenous Pathways Return to Roots, which was the topic of my thing. The intention of this particular fellowship is going to be start gathering all the knowledge that is at the risk of vanishing, right? And it will be a team of 5 people in every state. And there is a very interesting model that we have, and I will share that in January. By then it will be more solid, and hopefully we'll have support also for that. And the third thing that we are doing is creating these intergenerational indigenous learning spaces in community in partnership with them, where they come up with the content of what do they feel their children should learn and we should never get lost, right? And it comes from there as well. Besides that, we also keep introducing new things. And if the community feels that, yes, this will be of interest to them and their children and everybody, then we move forward with that. So there has to be a complete 100% buy-in. The idea is to create uh, learning spaces. From learning spaces, how do we go to learning communities? And from learning communities, how do we go to communities of abundance, where we keep sharing and keep thriving, right? So that is a work that is there planned for the next few years. Any of you who feel calls out to connect with it, you're welcome. You can always call me and connect with me. So if, I would love to hear voices. So whoever is typing, if you can just talk, it would be lovely to hear from you.
Actually I had a question.
Sure.
Because this is so interesting in terms of, uh, the importance of storing and just documenting the indigenous knowledge, the past knowledge that we have. In terms of the work that you do, I was very curious to know that once you've documented, some of the practices, uh, how can how do you use it to further the knowledge, and how can we access it? Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So all the knowledge that we are capturing, one, we intend to document it in different formats. So besides documenting it where it can be available in printable format, we also want to create digital libraries. There will be libraries in each of the learning ecosystem that we are building in these communities, right? So the audacious dream that once somebody asked me, "Ki, what is your most audacious dream?" And I like, my most audacious dream is to have one such space in every state of the country and every union territory as well, which will become the hub of such kind of research and knowledge and all kind of action we can do. And anybody who wants to learn can actually come to these spaces, or they can access it online as well. Right. So we want to become these hubs of knowledge, and where anybody can come and learn. And it has a lot of, areas that we have identified and defined, and we keep adding to it. The more we talk to the communities, the more emerges, right? And we say, okay, we need one such space as well over here, kind. So I live in Meghalaya, which is a sensitive zone, right? We are high on the radar of earthquakes and natural calamities and all. So we realized that life skills are very important in terms of people knowing how to, and being a search and rescue expert, I want to have that at least a percentage of every community of youth should know how to do search and rescue, and what are the immediate steps to take in case a disaster strikes. What will happen over there? Basic skills to have, right? How will support reach? What will be done? So looking at each ecosystem, what is really needed in that ecosystem? Like Kalimpong has a very different need. Darjeeling has a very, very different need. So if I look at the whole north to northeast mountain region, which is the Trans-Himalayan region, the needs are very different from Jammu, Kashmir, all the way to Sikkim. Identifying and isolating those needs and then building knowledge ecosystem that is relevant to that local ecosystem, but holistically it serves the larger community, right? That kind of a thing. So access will be there through digital or physical spaces. These are residential learning spaces that we will be creating. And we will also be doing a lot of exchange programs. So people can actually come through these exchange programs and actually live in these communities and actually experience learning for weeks together. And that is something that we will launch next year. Have I answered you, Asta? Okay. Nandini?
No, ma'am, I was just saying that it was really nice listening to you.
Thank you, Nandini. Anybody else would like to share anything? Or I thank you for the lovely comments, and yeah, absolutely. So whenever these opportunities emerge, now that we are a part of this network together, I will definitely share it with Astha, Nandini, and with Nihal as well. And they can also share it back with the circle, right? So, and that is the whole beauty, right? None of us need to be threatened with the other circles. We all can collaboratively work towards the same purpose and cause. And new purpose and dreams will emerge. I'm a big believer of dreams, and that we need to really, really nurture our own dreams. And they can become part of other dreams and make it more powerful. It's very important. So never let go of your own dream to pursue somebody else's dream. See how your dream can be a very intrinsic part of, their dream, or how they see vision in yours as well. That is very, very important. We have less than a minute, is what I see. Because if you guys don't have a question and if you don't have a reflection, then I think we can say goodbye. And I hope to see you all in January soon. I promise I'll come more prepared and better prepared.
Ma'am, you were prepared, and I think it was
And
it was so wonderful and powerful. As Nitin also said, I felt hopeful, I felt rejuvenated, and it brought back so many memories, and it was a reminder to my roots also. So thank you so
awesome.
much for giving us your time.
I'm
And
sure you all have grandparents. You go back and ask them for stories, huh?
I will definitely be looking forward to hear from you again
Done.
on
Perfect. Great. Yeah, let us see everybody for a picture, huh?